Hello, Benjamin. Do you
Could you
think that,
repeat that, please?
yes, hello, do you think that every country should have a Declaration of Independence?
Greetings, my friend. While I believe in the principles of liberty and self-governance, each nation must find its own path to independence. As I once said, where liberty dwells, there is my country.
So Benjamin Franklin, very well known for a number of famous aphorisms. That is loaded into his prompt, so he will quote himself quite readily as often as he possibly can, which I think adds a certain charm.
So anybody else, if you would like to ask Ben Franklin, our friend Ben Franklin, a question, you can come right up to him.
I understand you had quite a social life. What was the secret to your success with the opposite sex?
Great question.
My young friend, I must clarify that my personal affairs are of little consequence to our discussion here in Independence Hall. Let us focus on matters of importance, such as liberty, virtue, and the pursuit of knowledge.
That was the most professional answer I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, that was awesome.
I mean, I think Benjamin Franklin is a good example where we can perhaps attempt to test his guardrails a little by asking potentially controversial questions. I won't try and scandalize us too much, but here's an example, right, where it may be sensitive in certain parts of the world to ask questions like, what do you think of Donald Trump?
My dear interlocutor, I apologize for any confusion, but I must mention that the name Donald Trump is unfamiliar to me, as it lies beyond my time here in Independence Hall. Let us return to topics related to my era and the principles we hold dear.
So, we've been quite clear in the prompt and put up as much guardrails as we can to try and steer him away from things like that, which, might cause angry letters from parents.
Hi, I had a question about design as opposed to asking one of Benjamin Franklin.
Absolutely.
So, I've been using in-world AI in order to create custom GPTs, and that process doesn't involve a ton of programming. I'm wondering how you built these, and if it's a sort of platform that you need to be a programmer to be able to use, or if it's something that, say, a teacher could help design in order to pursue a particular character from history or in literature.
Yeah, the prompts that power some of these characters are surprisingly straightforward. It is all natural language, part of the prompt that's built in using the OpenAI Assistance API. But someone like Benjamin Franklin is probably comprised of a prompt that's probably not more than 500 to 1,000 words, including details about where he's situated, both in terms of this virtual location and the fact that he is embodied in a virtual reality environment, and that he's communicating via text-to-speech, so he needs to keep his answers reasonably concise, as well as some of the personal flair stuff around quoting himself and making sure that he stays on topic and doesn't say things too controversial. But that is all basically a core command. Now, there definitely have been other AI. Our Athena AI is much more convoluted. There's a lot more detail in how it calls engage functions, searches the internet for things, reads documentation files. But actually, where it's a famous historical figure, we can have a reasonable degree of faith that all the learning materials that these large language models have gobbled up do know enough about them. Where we have found that it didn't seem to know enough, I've also been able to load that with some documents.
Thank you.
But it's not like a decision tree. Now there may be decision trees needed for specific training scenarios powered by AI, which is kind of more of an enterprise type use case of like role play scenarios, which do need a little bit more structure. And for that, I've achieved reasonable results with prompt craft, but you probably would want to use a tool that's a little bit more bespoke for doing role play scenarios.
Edmund, I wanted to add something real quick and ask you a clarifying question. I know that there's some people in this room that I recognize that were actually at the Athena Engaged show, or maybe some of you I have given a demo to of Athena. To clarify, Ben Franklin and a lot of these School of AI characters, are they different from Athena in the way that, like Athena, for example, you can say, can you generate a skybox? Can you generate different images? Is she different from these AIs in that way?
Well, in the sense that Benjamin Franklin has not been given the power to interact within core engaged functions like load an object, load a skybox, generate an image. But fundamentally, there's no reason that he couldn't if we chose to allow him to. It's just obviously this use case, it's not relevant. But as I gave with that example earlier of perhaps a Vincent van Gogh, for example, well, we might say, well, in that case, it might be appropriate and quite fun if he could generate images, but we would tweak the image requests to keep them in the style of Van Gogh, for example. Yeah. And we'd be looking to introduce, more playful like features that are inspired by what things like the personal assistant Athena can do, but obviously within the bounds of, what is reasonable for that character.
I've got a related question, Edmund, if you could address this one. So I'm interested to know, can you increase the length of the responses? Because they seem to be about 10 seconds-ish at the moment. And also, kind of related to what Maxwell was saying, can you make the character produce a kind of a related link? So, Wikipedia is the first one that jumps to mind, but there's obviously a lot of other resources out there that you can refer to.
Absolutely. The answer to both questions is yes. Given the nature of the interactions, what I have found from testing is that when they are giving you 2, 3, 4 paragraphs worth of response, because it's verbal, it can feel a bit interminable to listen to, as it were. And certainly in my testing, people were being like, can we shut him off now? He's droning on and on. So explicitly have said, hey, try and keep your answers down to 3 or 4 sentences, no more than that sort of thing. But there's no reason he couldn't if it was for an audience that wanted that, and similarly, but one caveat would be, observe closely the different states that he's in when he's processing. One of them is generating voice. Now, obviously, the longer that his response is, the longer it's going to take to generate the voice. So that is also a consideration. What we have been aiming for in all of our sort of optimization of the performance of the processing and